Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here. I'm Chuck Salter, and joining me today is Michelle Saxon. Many of you know Michelle as our client support person. So I'm going to invite Michelle to say hello in just a minute. Michelle will be handling the chat of the webinar today. So if you have questions along the way, as I'm demonstrating some of the new features of the mapping update that's just been released, you can chat with her and she'll try to answer them via chat. If we need to be notified about a question that I need to address in the webinar, Michelle will break in and let me know what your questions are. So I want to invite Michelle to greet everyone.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all here. I recognize a lot of your names, and I hope you learn a lot. Let me know if you need anything.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to get started. People will continue to join the meeting. So we're going to continue with the scheduled time. I'm going to be sharing my screen. And you should be seeing now the user interface window, the user assistant window, when you log into your study area. We're going to begin here looking at the options that are here. But before we go any further with the options that are in the user assistant window, I want you to be sure that you know there is a help menu on this screen. When you select the help menu, it moves you to the mapping interface window. I'm logged in as a local church user. You'll notice that the help menu has documents. It also has overview videos that are here. So you can select a topic for a video you'd like to see. There's a contact us here so that if you want to speak with us following the webinar, there's an email, a telephone number, and also live chat. And of course, we appreciate your feedback. I want to point out to you in the help menu, there are a number of documents here you may want to familiarize yourself with if you haven't seen them. There is a how to register handout that is specific to your regional agency. So if you wanted to invite someone else from your local church or your agency to register to use MissionInsite, there is a handout for your agency when you log in. There is information about how we gathered our faith-based information in research called Quadrennium. They power the Ministry Insight and the Religious Insight reports. There are actually 4 of them. We'll look at them later. We'll spend time talking about Mosaic information from Experian. And so there are documents here relative to that information, Mosaic household types, including the Mission Impact Guide. And we'll look at that before we're done today as well. And then there are reports and system documents here. Specifically, I want to call your attention to the Quick Insight worksheet. We'll look at it later. You can download it from here. You can download it from your own report, a Quick Insight report. There's also a worksheet for Executive Insight. There are several documents that may be helpful to you in understanding how to use this tool. Here are ministry applications in a single page. There are benefits of People Plot, and there's also a reference guide here for the terminology we use in our reports. To get back to the user assistant window, if you're on the mapping interface screen, you'll be at the control center. Notice at the very top of the control center, there is what appears to be a bit of a wand that will take you back to the assistance window. So we're going to go there now, back to the window that you'll be greeted by when you log in the first time. What I'd like to do is walk through the user assistance window and specifically talk about the things that are new, that have been enhanced in the new mapping update that was just released. So we're going to start with plotting people. You'll also notice on this window, there is an icon with a little camera. It's a where to begin video. People often say, what do I do with MissionInsite? So you can watch that video, and it tells you a number of things about how to get started, one of which is plotting people. So we're going to select the plot people, answer a question by plotting people. You'll notice there are two options when you do that. Most importantly, be aware there is a video to explain how you would upload people from your local church. Active people, not your membership list. There is a process to do that. We're not going to take time to go through that process today, but simply clicking on selecting upload people will start that process for you. Important note, in order to upload people, if you're a local church user, you need to have the church administrator designation. And for the moment, you'll need to contact us, and we will make sure that you have that particular designation as church administrator. We obviously don't want unauthorized people to upload and retrieve data. So be aware, if it's grayed out here when you look at upload people, it's grayed out because you don't have that level of access. We're at a local church that I'm familiar with, and so we're going to actually plot the people that they have uploaded. I'm selecting plot people and click next. Now, this congregation has created a custom plot, which you can do for the pledgers that they had in 2018, but most of you will use the congregant default template in your process of uploading. In fact, I would recommend all of you start there. And so we'll select congregants, default, and we'll click next. Now you can plot congregants in total, or you can plot some of the congregants, for example, by distance to church or member status or member by means, if you have included those attributes in your upload file. For today, for our purposes of illustration, we're simply going to plot all of the people that have been uploaded in this church. Now, you can also display those plots by a number of options, legend. Often it's helpful to plot your people by distance to church. So by color coding, you can see how far people live from your church building. For our illustrations today, we'll just select none. I am, however, going to select show labels because that's a feature that allows you literally to mouse over one of the dots on the map and see the name of that person. So we'll select next, and then a summary appears and we'll click finish. And we're at the mapping interface and you see all of the dots on the map. And again, if you get close to one of these dots, you will be able to select it and it will tell you the individual that's there. We're not going to do this more than one time because this is actual information from a local church. If you, for some reason, don't like the color green, which is the default, you can come over here and select the green color icon, change it to whatever color you'd like. I'm fond of red. I think they stand out better. Once you select it, you can click anywhere and the color will be changed to red. Notice that there are 207 congregants plotted for this church. I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the mapping interface. And on the left side of the screen, we have the toolbar. This is what you've seen before. There are a few new icons, and there are several different ways things display now that are a bit different from what you might have been used to. Functionality is just the same. So the information box, which is the box you see here, can be hidden. If you select the eye icon, it will hide the box and it will open it once again. All of these menu items collapse or open depending upon what you're wanting to see. This is the tool that selects something on the mapping screen, the overlay. And when you select that tool, notice previously when you made a selection, the options move to the right. Now they're in a circle, take up less real estate on the map. And so this is the select. If you have multiple objects you want to select, for example, you wanted to select multiple zip codes that were appearing on the map, you would select the second icon, little plus by the arrow. And if for some reason you want to know latitude and longitude, where your congregation might be or a particular place, you can select that icon and click on the map and it will give you the latitude and longitude of that location. For some congregations in very rural areas that may have a more difficult time getting a street address, latitude and longitude is one of the ways we can actually display a location. To close the menu, simply click on it. We have the ability to zoom in and zoom out just as before. So if I select zoom in, the map will zoom in incrementally. Notice the increments are much smaller than before. So you have much higher control over the amount of zoom and the zoom in and zoom out. Here's the zoom out. Now I'm going to move to another part of this community to illustrate this next tool. I'm actually going to zoom into a metro center. So I'm zooming in slowly here. I could zoom in a little more quickly. You're going to begin seeing buildings now as we look at this metropolitan area. One of the new features we have is 3D mapping. So if we select this little icon that looks like a cube, you now change the screen to 3D mapping. Once you're in 3D mapping, you have the ability to move how the map appears, change the pitch and bearing. But I want you to be aware, I'm left-clicking my mouse on the toolbar, and I'm going to actually hold my left mouse button down as I move my mouse. Let me say that again. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down as I move my mouse. When I do so, watch what happens. I begin to move the pitch, the bearing of the area. You must stay on the toolbar to move it around. Move back where you are. If you select it again, the display goes back to the original pitch, and you can turn that feature off and on. This icon is resetting zoom. It now appears as the United States map. We'll select it, and we're zoomed out once again to the original zoom when we logged in. We're logged in as a local church user, so you can see the church is in the center of the icon. The information window can be moved around and changed in size. Just be aware of that. If you want to do that, you can do that. A new feature in terms of how it appears, and that is in drawing a new shape. Most of you have drawn a polygon before. So if we left-click, draw new shape, and query, instead of the menu appearing to the right here, it's now on the right side of the mapping interface. So I want to draw a polygon, and so I'm going to select the polygon tool. Notice there are tools like rectangle, circle. You can draw a line. You can actually put a marker on the map. You can do a freehand polygon, or you can clear all shapes here. So we're simply going to draw a polygon so I can show you a little bit different process in terms of how the polygon appears. I'm going to left click one time and drag. Notice we have a dotted line now. When I left click and drag for a new direction, the polygon falls in. I'm going to follow this road, left click and drag, left click and drag, left click and drag, left click and drag, and I'm going to come over and say, this is the polygon I want. I click again, and we now have a shape. And you see up here under selections and drawings, we have a polygon. Over on the right side of the screen, this is called the control center, and notice it moved away from home to the shapes menu. I can now save this shape just as I've always done before. There is an icon here. It looks like a floppy disk. If you select that icon, you can name this shape if you like. I'm going to say, just say Epworth test. Whoops. Epworth test polygon. I'm going to save it. Now, if I decided I did not want, notice, by the way, the text for this new save shapes much more readable than what was true previously. We're going to clear this shape, so I'll be able to do that in two ways. I can actually hide it, even though it's still there. If I wanted to draw a second shape, I could do that. And to turn it back on, you simply select this, include the shape in queries, so we could do a report if we wanted to. If I want to delete the shape, use this trash can icon, and the shape goes away. But you remember, I just saved the shape. So I can go over here to Save Shapes. And we can draw one. Well, that wasn't the one I just drew, it was this one. So now I have two. One of the things of the new system is you can display multiple shapes on the map at the same time. Very helpful. One of them is a 20-minute walk time. We'll talk about that later. I want to delete that 20-minute walk time, and now this is the shape that we had previously drawn. You can use the clear map icon on the toolbar. Again, all of the selections are in an arc. They are clear the map, clear shapes, just as we've seen in the system you're familiar with. You can clear your plots. You can clear markers if you have them on the map. And you can also clear a thematic map or an opportunity scan. Let's say I wanted to keep the shape, but I wanted to clear the plots. So I would come up here and clear plots and select it, and the plots go away. Intuitive, we think. If I don't like what I just did, I can come to the undo, and when I do that, it will bring what was previously present in that second shape that we had. So I'm going to get rid of that. Don't need it. And of course, you can have a redo as well. There is a feature of toggle full screen, which I think is particularly helpful if you're going to look at the detail of your map. Notice on the right side, the tools are still present to do drawing if you'd like to do that. And you have your toolbar menu over here. To exit the full screen, you simply click the same icon on the toolbar, and you're back to the place where you were previously. There is a export map image function that's been present previously. I can select export map image. Just a note, you can export the map only, a legend only, map and legend in separate images. In this new mapping interface introduction, we have a couple of things we have yet to do. So I encourage you to, if you're going to export a map image, use the PNG or JPEG options, not PDF. We're working on the PDF export, not perfect at this point. So I'm going to select PNG. You can select the level of quality of the export just for ease. We'll do the regular export. We're going to click download image so you can see what this looks like when the work is done. I'm going to choose photos just so you can see. And here we have essentially a shot of the screen. In Windows and in Macs, there are ways to edit this. You can edit and create and so on. So you can have a lot of fun editing an exported image if you'd like to do that. There's also an icon to save the map that's present previously. Not going to take time to do that, but you can actually save a map and then reload the map. So anything that you have on the map, if you had people plotted or a thematic map run, you could save exactly what the work was and then retrieve it by coming back again to the Save Map icon and loading that map. If you want to get to the Help menu, you can access the Help menu from here, and you see it opens the Help menu on the right side of the screen in the control panel. If there are new features, what's new in the system, you'll see when you log in the first time, a message here. We're going to eliminate this polygon, just remove it. I want to show you the navigation bar at the bottom of the screen. This will change the view of the map. So when I select view, you'll see here that there is a search feature, so you can search for an address. You can zoom in and zoom out if you'd like to do that. But most of the time, people use the map type. So if we wanted satellite imagery with streets, we could select that, and now you have satellite imagery with streets. Going to zoom in a bit so you can actually see this in more detail. And if you want to go back to the original map, you can do that. Any questions coming up, Michelle? It's also a traffic map here.
No questions.
All right. There's a map style option, and honestly, friends, this is MissionInsite 301 or 401. But if you want to design your own map, you can actually do that now. We're not going to go there, but you have the ability to do that and also change the opacity. The layers menu, let's go back to the regular Zoom. The layers menu allows you to display various layers on the map. So if you wanted to turn off your church location, you could do it here, off and on. Standard layers are things like cities and counties and states and zip codes. So if you wanted to turn on, for example, a census block geography in your area around your church, you would do it here. You would select that. Notice the green boundaries are the census boundaries. If you don't like the color green, one of the features of the new mapping system is you can select a different style color. So if you don't like green, you can make it whatever color you'd like to see. So to unselect or not display census block groups, just select again. Census block groups are about 1,500 people in each area when they were created. They vary in size, of course, as population shifts. Census tracts are about 4,000 people. You can see the difference if you overlay both of them. You can see that census tracts are smaller and there are more of them. As you move out to rural areas, of course, these geographies get larger. Here are zip code boundaries. Everyone's familiar with zip code boundaries. So here they are displayed. If, again, you're not liking the red color, you can move to a different color and display that. If you want to turn on labels for any of these boundaries, you simply select the icon with an A in it, and that would turn on the labels for each of the zip codes, and you can turn it off the same way. If I wanted to select a zip code for a report, I could come over here and select the select tool icon, and then click on the map, and it would select that zip code. At that point, since you have a geography selected, you can begin to create reports if you like. I'm going to close this window and say what's the standard layers. I wanted to also show you we have elementary school, middle school, and high school boundaries. So that is also a layer that people may appreciate. Let's turn on the elementary school boundaries in this location, and the middle school boundaries. We'll turn on the name as well. You can see. Very helpful if you want to know, for example, after plotting your people, where they fall, for example, in school boundaries. All right. The plotting menu will not deal with that right now. What I'd like to do is go to the demographics window and simply show you that here you can select reports. You can also create thematic maps. Everything that I'm doing on the mapping interface, almost everything I'm doing, you can do from the user assistant window. So I think I'm going back there now and illustrate how to generate a report in the new system. It'll bring us back to the mapping interface. I want to be sure to show you travel polygons. That's a new feature in the shapes menu. Very, very important. So we will do that before we're done. Let's go back to the assistant window and let's move to the place where most of our clients spend their time, and that's generating a demographic report. One of the challenges for churches is understanding their mission area. And so they can choose predefined boundaries, such as zip codes, cities, counties, whatever it may be, for their shape, or they may want to draw a radius or polygon. So we're going to keep this simple for illustration purposes. We'll select a predefined boundary, and we'll select a zip code. Now, you can select any zip code from the area where you are. I'm simply going to select one I know. So I'm going to select that zip code and click Next. What's going to happen then is we need to tell the system, do we want a predefined report or do we want to build our own report? Let's select predefined first. You can see it says the zip code is the one we selected, 31820. There are 3 predefined demographic reports: Quick Insight, Full Insight, and Executive Insight. To understand the differences between them, Quick Insight is an 11-page look. I'm going to select Quick Insight as one of the reports I'd like to see. If you want to, I always sort of kid about this, but it is true. If you want to scare folks to death, download a Full Insight report, take that to a meeting. It's about 30 pages. For most people, that is complete overkill, and they will be frankly overwhelmed by it. So I would not start there. In fact, I would not use a Full Insight report until you want to look at a specific area that you've chosen for mission in high-level detail. I believe our most effective general predefined demographic report is likely the Executive Insight report, so I'll select that because it's built around 12 insights that we believe churches and agencies need to understand about the area around them. Then we talked a little bit about quadrennium earlier. That's the faith-based research that we have done twice. There was a white paper about how we collected the information. So the quick version of understanding where we got the information for religious insight and ministry insight is this. Over 100,000 samples of across the United States, not just church folks, of course, all people. In order to be able to project information in an area around your church, that sample size needs to be correctly distributed in your area and in areas across the country. So what we've done is use 2 filters for distribution. The first is the census regions. Clearly, people respond to questions differently in the Northeast than they do the West, for example. In addition, the mosaic information provided by Experian is in 71 different household types, but also 19 general groupings. That 19 groupings, 19 different groups of Experian households, is the second filter we use for projecting information. When we use those 2 filters in areas around your church or your agency, we have a confidence level of 80 to 95% and a margin of error of 2 to 3.5%. So the Religious Insight report is the full report. The priorities report, the Religious Insight priorities report, is a summary of the larger report. Ministry Insight is the full report. Both of those are around 30 pages, Quick Religious Insight and Ministry Insight. And then the priorities report summarizes. So for our time, I'm going to select Religious Insight and Ministry Insight. So what we have here are 4 reports selected, and we'll click Next. So we have a summary of what we've selected. You can actually see the geography. We'll click Finish, and the system begins generating those 4 reports that we've selected. So it's we think about as easy as it could be to generate demographic information. So all of these will be generating. The first thing I want to do, however, is show you the Quick Insight report. For those of you that are less familiar, perhaps, with our reports, here is the Quick Insight report. Again, a quick look, and you'll see it's created in themes, really. Story view page talks about indicators graphically. Not going to walk through the entire report, but what you'll notice is in the theme view, we have both graphic representations. In this case, it's population. We also have tables for those people that want to read the raw numbers. One of the more important parts of the report is the mosaic profile information. So I'm going to show you that section. And this is, it's called the diversity theme. And without a lot of explanation about mosaic, it comes from Experian. Most of you probably know that if you're already users. And you'll know that there are 71 unique household types. And they start with segment number 1 in Group A and end with segment number 71 in Group S. So Group A is the most affluent, generally speaking. Group S is the least affluent. Segment number 1, most affluent, generally speaking, it's wealth actually. Segment number 71 is the least affluent. So you can see here, there are groups. Group C is booming with confidence. And there are 2 individual segments in this area, aging of Aquarius and boomers and boomerangs. You can also see there are some babies in bliss folks here, some great names. Here's what I need you to see. You can actually download the full Experian e-handbook. So if you wonder what that is, it's a big document. So stand by when you download it. I would recommend you download it to your computer. Here is what the document looks like. Just want to say a word about 300 data points that Experian collects on US households, and that's in fact how they create these portraits. So I know you're not able to read all of the details, not necessary, just be aware. Everything from household age, head of household age, to marital status, to where they work, how far they travel to work, their income, home values. It really is a tremendous profile. And from that then is how they create each of these individual segments that we look at in the reports. So for example, if we're looking at the wealthiest segment in America, American royalty, A01, this portrait will tell you the story of this household type, 71 different types. I would encourage you to listen to the videos that are part of the help menu to understand how to unpack each of these individual household types. These are communication channel preferences. So interestingly enough, this example of American royalty, James and Nancy, those names aren't made up. They are the most prevalent names in American royalty. Don't ask me why. This is the way that James and Nancy would typically communicate with the world. The number 100 is the measurement point, the median. So if you look at direct mail or printed materials, Jim and Nancy probably would look at some mail. If your church wants to build a smartphone app, well, if 100 is the norm nationally, a 30 score means Jim and Nancy may have a phone, but communicating with them that way isn't going to work very well. They have a computer, no doubt, but they're not going to look for things on the computer day in and day out. They probably use email, but it's not the highest way they engage the world. Broadcast television is a big moment for the opportunity to communicate. They're watching a fair amount, and interestingly, they stream significantly. So the church might be able to do a podcast or something else that would encourage connecting with these folks. If you looked at a very different group, such as, let's find one here that would be a little bit different. Notice status seeking singles, Adam and Emily. Well, if we wanted to mail something to Adam and Emily, that would be a significant loss probably. And they're going to be carrying their smartphone with them at all times, including if they come to a worship experience or a gathering, they're going to have it with them. Again, they are watching broadcast television. You can see they're much more connected technologically. I'm going to close this and go back to our report. There are 2 videos to understand how to read these individual portraits. Can't say enough about encouraging you to watch the video. Also, how would you use each of these individual household types for mission planning? Watch the video. Also, there's a link to the Mission Impact Guide. And so I'm going to select that. These are embedded in every one of the demographic predefined reports. So you don't have to go anywhere else. They're in the reports. And you can select any one of the 71 types and look at what is a step further than the Experian information in the Mission Impact Guide. Not going to take time to read any of this other than to say you can see a profile of this household type and what's unique about them. This uses Experian information. This is by Tom Bandy, and I edited the work with Tom as we did this last, and the second update to this work. So about 80% of what you see here comes from Experian profiles, and the remaining 20% comes from Tom's work over 30 years with different household types in America in consulting. There are ministry filters here, such as what kind of leadership preference would work best with status-seeking singles. So it's helpful to understand what these terms mean. There's a definition of these terms at the back of this document. So for every one of the 71 household types, you can look up the corresponding Mission Impact Guide resource. What kind of hospitality would work best? What about worship preferences? Not styles, by the way, preferences. What about education? What about small groups? What about outreach? I know I'm moving quickly, just want you to see them all. What about facility preferences? What about financial preferences? Thinking about your stewardship work or fundraising. Very important to understand about communication, right? You notice this is called status-seeking singles, younger, connected people. Notice the greens. They're email receptive, mobile telephone, online computer, internet, radio. But where do you see no check marks? Traditional church communication. The internet is a way of life for these folks. And so understanding the unique characteristics, so important. And so here are the definitions for you to be able to look at what this means as you're reading through this work. All right, I'm going to close that screen. I see a number of potential questions. So is there anything I need to address at all, Michelle?
Actually, no, I think I have addressed it all.
Okay.
I just have one now that's asking about accessing this later, and I'm explaining that you are taping it, and we'll get it distributed.
All right. Yes, we'll have a link for the video. So this is the Executive Insight Report, the 12 insights that make me believe this is one of the more helpful reports we have. And while a lot of what I'm covering is not completely new, some of the ways to get to this may be new to some of you, I want you to see the generations insight, number 11. I want you to be clear that this is extremely important. And I missed talking about the worksheet, so I will do that in just a moment. Go back. Here's the generational information for this area that we're studying. So you notice the difference in this report has a narrative. It will have graphics. It will have a table. I like the fact there's a narrative that does some description. So one of the things that's absolutely clear today is most congregations and frankly most organizations do not understand the impact of generations. Just simply look at what's happening to the boomer generation, the green line. What's happening to the silent generation, okay, in the brown line. What's happening to the youngest generation, Homeland or Z, Gen Z, so that if you do not pay attention to what's happening with these millennial Gen X generations and then ultimately the homelands, you're going to find you're out of step with what's actually happening in the culture. At the end of each of these reports, If there is a worksheet that you can use to unpack the report, it will be here. So you can literally download the Executive Insight worksheet from here and use that. I want to go back to illustrate something here. I'm going to start over. I'm going directly to the mapping interface because here's what happened. I closed the Quick Insight report that I just generated. I'm going to click on Recent, and there will be a Quick Insight report that I just generated in the Recent folder here. So I'm going to select it. I want you to see the specific workshop that frankly people don't know exists, and it's been available for a while, but I really want you to be aware of this. Here is the download Quick Insight worksheet. I'm going to download it. I want you to see it. Here's why. Many times organizations, if you have a leadership team gathered, may think they already know all they need to know about their environment. Have you ever experienced that? If in fact you have, this is not only a worksheet, it really is a group process piece that takes about 2 hours or so to do in a small group setting. And so without going through the entire process, here's what it does. This worksheet is handed out to individuals. They're asked to fill out what they know about their study area without talking to their neighbor. And they don't have the report. So what happens is grumbling begins, as you can imagine. Well, we don't know this and so on. But wait a minute, we thought you said you did know your area. And so what's the population of the study area? Is it going to grow or decline by what percentage and so on? So everybody fills out the report sort of grudgingly, thinking they already knew their area, but then when asked to provide information, they really can't. Then in groups of no more than 5 people, we ask people to come to a consensus. So give them a piece of newsprint or whatever way, a whiteboard, whatever you have. So that imagine what happens when groups of 3 or 4 people talk about population change and think about how they have to come to consensus. Very difficult to do. And the dialogue begins. Then when the small groups, let's say you've got a group of 15 people or 20, whatever it might be. Let's say you have 3 small groups and they've each got pieces of newsprint. When you then share those pieces of newsprint with the full group, it is clear that the room doesn't agree. 80–90% of the time, most of these numbers don't match. It's at that point that you provide the Quick Insight report and begin to process back in groups what people might learn against what they thought they knew. Are there any surprises? Are there any confirmations? I think you understand where I'm going. And then reflecting on what people are seeing, we ask the question, are there some life concerns in your community you might not know about? Are there ways that the church or the organization is like the people? Are there ways in which we already engage them with some of the things we do? And if so, can we strengthen those ministries? What if we're different from the people in our area? What might we do to change and add to the work that we already have? I know I took a minute with this. I hope you might take a peek at it. It's an important report. I mean, a important worksheet for you to use potentially if you want to get people thinking about what's true in their environment. Religious Insight, one of the other reports I downloaded. What's in it? Beliefs about God, beliefs about Jesus, social and moral values, and faith and religious involvement. We simply can't unpack all of this. This is the summary of the larger Religious Insight report. But I want you to see that it's a way of understanding what people feel about God in your community, in this zip code, for example, what they feel about Jesus. Very important if you're thinking about what it's like. And what about social and moral values? How can that assist you in thinking about the kind of mission opportunities there may be in your environment? And probably this is the piece of this report that gets used the most. If you downloaded a demographic report like Quick Insight even, and you knew there were 2,500 households in your study area, But you also knew that 60% of those 2,500 households were not involved with their faith. Would that be a mission opportunity? Can you see that in this zip code, the amount of folks who said they were not involved with their faith has moved 8 points from 2012, the first survey we did, which means the involvement level of people is certainly going down over time here. So the Religious Insight Report gives you some insight, forgive the pun, about what people are feeling in a particular area around faith involvement specifically and theologically. Here's Ministry Insight. What's in it? Life concerns. How would you use life concerns? What about preaching? What about ministry opportunities that are contextually relevant because of what's going on in the community? And then there's a section of report that talks about why people don't participate in a church and why people that are self-designated as being part of a church are thinking of leaving. Why would they leave? Program and ministry preferences, and please pay attention to information sources and social media preferences. Top life concerns, not going to unpack this. There's more to cover in our time before we're done. Here are 10 of 21 reasons people are not involved in the church. You can see for yourself: judgmental, focused on money, people in the church thinking of leaving, people too judgmental. And look at number 2, don't believe in God. These are people who have self-identified as being a part of a congregation, and yet they don't believe in God. I won't even comment. One thing I will say before we're done, regardless of where you are in America, if you download the report for Ministry Insight and you look at ministry and program recommendations, you will find the number 1 in your area is the number 1 everywhere in America. More than by 2 to 1. By 2 to 1, people selected warm and friendly encounters against any other ministry or program. What does that say? That says that, in fact, if we do not provide opportunities for people to connect and build friendships, this is not new, but it's now documented, then it doesn't matter, even though in sermons may be important and social activities may be important and things we do in our environment, maybe the building, all of those things, but if people can't connect, they will not participate and they'll be gone. They'll find a place where they can. Here's social media preferences and information sources. So in forced pairs, what do people look for in your community? Would they be reading Huffington Post or Fox News? Would they be listening to you or looking at USA Today or television news? You can read that for yourself. What about social media preferences, and what do they do daily and how much of it? So I'll let you explore that on your own. So one of the things that I want to do now in the remaining about 10 minutes is talk about some very powerful new features. We've touched on a few. I want to create a theme map. You can do that from this window, or you can do that from the mapping interface. We're simply going to look at demographic trends, in this case, population, and click next. Very simple to do. Here's the new feature. The default now is census layer. You can select or force the map to display zip codes or by school boundaries. However, if you leave census layer selected, the system now will automatically display for you the most optimal census layer to view for understanding what you're trying to learn. I'll illustrate that. You can change the color palette too, but we're going to click next and click finish. So now the system has built the thematic map. I'm going to close this information box because it's in the way. You'll notice that there is a kind of a floating information, kind of a legend here. This is showing you demographic trends, population, all right? We're going to come over here. I'm actually going to now change what this map displays. Could have done that from the user assistant window and display percentage change. So we're going to be seeing growth or decline. So now we're seeing growth or decline by census block group. The darkest color, you notice over here, this is 13% or more growth. And I can change that by simply sliding here. Let's say I want to know if there are areas of 15% growth. Notice how it changed? I want to maybe move this middle color to 12%. Now you see how the actual coloring of the display is changing. I'm going to move this one. So we're literally customizing by sliding a bar how this map displays. You know, you can also see a quick preview of the percentage here. This moves around, all right? You can also select new features, all of this, toggle the feature that when I hover over any of these geographies, watch what happens. Now I can look at the information in this block group and it comes up automatically. I think this is incredible myself. The ability to quickly look at what you're learning from one block group to the next. And you can turn this off if you like. What if you don't like blue or whatever color you call this? You can select the color wheel and change it to greens or whatever color you like. And now we have greens. Here's the new power beyond everything you've seen. When I zoom out, the map will automatically change from block groups to census tracts and ultimately to counties. So as I zoom out, of course, you can see it zooming in small increments. I'm going to zoom out more now. We are now looking at census tracts. So the system has automatically changed the display. If I zoom out further, I'm now looking at counties. And the reason these colors are this way is there's not much growth out here. And the growth areas you can see are in the dark displays. That is the new feature of thematic mapping that I think is extremely important to understand. I'm going to clear everything on the screen. I've got to show you, before we get out of time here, under the Shapes menu, this is where you have to go to find it, travel polygons. I believe using travel polygons may help you as much as anything we do besides plotting your people to understand the reach of a church and the depth of a church, to understand ministry opportunities. Now, travel polygons appeared like this before. You have drive time, walk time, cycling. We're going to do walk time. And if I knew the address of this church, which I don't, I could type it in, but I'm just going to select a point on the map. I'm going to zoom in here to the church location and select that corner where I know the church is. Click next. Here's what's brand new. Walk time. What's true in a 10-minute walk time from this church building? What about 15 minutes? What about 20 minutes? I could go 25 if I want. I could display 4. Click next. It says, this is what we've chosen. How much detail do you want? I don't want to create a high detail now. I just want a medium detail resolution. In other words, how many points are in the shape that we're drawing? Click draw. And now you see all of these shapes automatically superimposed over one another. Also notice we don't walk out into the airport here. not a likely case. One of the things that you can do is you can then select which of these you want to report on. So I want to start with I'm going to start with a 10-minute walk. So I'm going to hide the 20-minute walk and the 15-minute walk. Here is our 10-minute walk time from this building. I don't want to read through 30 pages. I have a question. demographics. I want to build my own custom report, which you can do from the mapping interface or from the user assistant window. If you remember, there was an option for predefined reports or custom reports. We're simply using the custom reports here on the mapping interface. You can do it in the user assistant window. We're going to build a demographics report by the things that we want to know. I want to know one thing: families with children, 10-minute walk. Maybe I want to know about Mosaic as well. So here we go. And I'm going to generate the report. What I think is helpful about this is you don't have to spend time reading through lots of information. You can get just what you want and only what you want. Over here, you can change the font size. If you're like me, you need bigger fonts. 10-minute walk, 10 minutes, 81 families with children, and 33% of them are single females. And here you can see the different Mosaic segments in this walk time. So you can see what the households are like in the area at the same time. You can download this to Excel or PDF. You can create charts. If you want to create charts for all this, you can see them in charts. You can open a new window, and of course, this is the font size. So quickly, I've learned some pretty remarkable things. I want to know what would happen if I went out to a 20-minute walk. I want to do the same thing. Here we go. Generate the report. I've just gone 10 minutes further. Wait till you see the difference in numbers by moving from a 10-minute walk to a 20-minute walk. Really amazing, actually. And we went from 82 households to 342 households, and 156 of them are single females. 46% of the households with children are single mothers. If that's not a ministry opportunity, I'm not sure what would be. So if we decided we wanted to do something more strategic, I'm going to just unselect these geographies now. If I wanted to do something more strategic and I wanted to scan a certain area, our most powerful tool is Opportunity Scan. Now, Opportunity Scan can be run from the user assistant window. We're going to go and actually do it from the mapping interface. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. All right. So now we're kind of out at probably 20,000 feet. I'm going to draw a shape very quickly so you can see how it works. Just going to quickly draw a shape because maybe our congregation is interested in families that have children under age 5. So I've got a little shape drawn here. I'm going to move to demographics. I'm going to say Opportunity Scan. I'm going to close this so we can see it. I'm going to choose phase of life, and I want 0 to 4-year-olds. Everybody kind of following what I'm doing here? And I'm going to do this by the smallest possible geography, census block groups. I'm going to click scan, and away we go. We now have a result for this area. I'm going to make this just a little smaller so you can see. I'm going to drag this over. Here's our study area. 213 0 to 4-year-olds in that neighborhood. You see where the marker is? Right to the east of the church. Here's 205. Clear to the west. Here's 196. So we can quickly learn the top 4 or 5 neighborhoods where children exist. So the learning for this congregation would be, there's a pretty significant population of 0 to 4-year-olds not far from them to the east. That's Opportunity Scan. I believe we have covered the new features and in general the features of the new mapping interface. Are there questions, Michelle?
No, not particular questions, but there was someone earlier that wanted to go over how to plot their congregants and create the comparative insight report. I would suggest that they would go to help, and under overview videos, there is a video how to plot people with people plot, and then there is a where to begin, pardon me, that goes over the comparative insight report.
So if I was going to illustrate that very quickly, which I can do to kind of finish out, I'll just plot the folks in this congregation. So we've done that. You obviously have to have a shape. So we'll draw a shape. I can do it rapidly just so you can all see it. If you're going to do a comparative insight report for your congregation to understand them, you probably want to capture at least 80% of the people. So I have now a shape. How would I know if it's 80%? Because over here you see of the 207, only 43% are here, but you can just make the shape larger. Once you have a shape and your people plotted, if you go to demographics and select predefined reports, you can name this whatever you like, and I usually say it's a 43% of your people instead of polygon. I would put the church name here, and then you can select the comparative insight report. When you do that and generate it, you will have the comparative insight report for the people plotted inside this selected geography. So that's what we've just accomplished in seconds. Be sure you upload your active people, not your membership list. For obvious reasons, you want to be able to look at the real folks in your church. So here we are, and you can see with the comparative insight report. These are the people of the church. These are the people of the community. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
And be sure to know that the quick insight, full insight, and executive insight are not going to analyze only your church members. They will be analyzing all people in that particular shape.
Well said. So if you're looking to do the report that compares your people to the community, you must plot your people and you must run a comparative insight report. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope it was helpful. Hope you learned some things. We will have a recording of the video. And if there are no further questions, we're about 2 minutes over our time. Anything else?
No, sir. Just want to tell everyone we appreciate them.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.